Всем привет! Меня зовут Мария, и я хочу вам представить новую технику для
Hello everyone, my name is Maria and I wanted to talk to you about the new
для того, чтобы вы смогли
approach
писать вопросы в чат-бот.
to ACL abusers.
Я работаю в SolidLab.
I work at SolidLab. We do pen testing there, and at one of such pen tests we found a curious ACL WriteProperty for the domain. We searched online and couldn't find nothing close to this kind of exploits. So we decided to do research of our own to find out what we can do about it.
Но прежде чем мы начнем,
But before we get started, let me tell you
может быть, для тех,
some basics. If you are not yet familiar with Active Directory security, what is ACL? It's a mechanism of granting access to the Windows and Active Directory,
ACL,
and it consists of ACL. They are records that decide or determine which rights are granted to individuals or groups to particular objects.
и определяет
It determines access, tackle, and audit, settle. So if I say ACL, I will mean tackle by this. On the slide, you can see such ACL. Here is a domain object, and there we found an ACL for the malicious user who can write all properties to the domain object. Why is it important to analyze this and to review this from the perspective of attackers and from the perspective of defenders? Well, there are several configurations that attackers can use to perform certain actions. On the slide, you can see the list of such configurations and the impacts that they can deliver. If we have a generic right per group, then we'll be able to add our user to this group. If we have a generic right to the user, then we will be able to set SPN and to target cyber roasting. If we have extended rights per user, we'll be able to parse the change of password. If we have extended rights to the computer object, and at the same time we have a labs mechanism set up, we'll be able to read the local admin's password, etc., etc. On the link here, you will find a white paper from Spectre Ops, and there in this white paper, the guys write about different configurations and how they can be exploited. Besides, there are other interesting mechanism exploits. They exploit mechanisms that are supposed to defend us. In Active Directory, there is admin SD holder option. It fixes the rights for sensitive users or groups. If we have already acquired the admin's domain and we want to get stuck on the domain, we can exploit it in a way that the rights will be rewritten, and every hour it will be checking our rights and rewriting our rights over and over. And if the security person sees that an ACL is invalid, then it will be rewritten on the object. But most likely, the security guy will not take a look at admin SD holder. It means that in 1 hour, things will be reversed, and we will keep our privileged rights, our privileges. How can you find misconfigurations, and which tools can you use to do that? There is an in-vogue ACL scanner from PowerView. It's based on PowerShell, and it can find non-default settings. It will not show you all ACLs on the domain because there are too many of them, but it will highlight the most interesting ones that shouldn't be there from the perspective of this tool, that are non-default. Here, on our test domain, the test domain SolidLab local, it found the WriteProperty for the malicious user.
Также есть хороший инструмент
There is another interesting tool called Ping Castle. In addition to those terrible graphs, it also provides a lot of information on configurations, but you have to know how to read it. It may not be obvious. The tool is free of charge,
Там в том числе мы тоже смогли, например, найти
and we could find
пользователь.
the malicious user with the help of this tool. It showed us that the malicious user has the rights to the domain object. What's curious is that the most popular tool to analyze the Active Directory misconfigurations, Bloodhound, couldn't highlight these misconfigurations. At the same time, it's an excellent tool for other attacks that involve ACL, so you should use it, but just be mindful that you shouldn't limit yourself just to Bloodhound and double-check its findings.
Возвращаемся к нашему.
Let's go back to our ACL. We've got WriteProperty on domain. And what can we do?
Ну, самое банальное, это мы можем попробовать.
The simplest thing is to try to rewrite some attributes or to delete them to launch a DOS. But it's not what we want to do. In fact, let's see whether we can escalate our rights in the domain. First thing,
Анализируя Active Directory,
you'll notice if you analyze the ever Active Directory, if you ever launched an attack, you know that there is an attribute called machine account quarter. Its value is 10. By default, it shows how many computers a user can add to the domain. You don't use it, as a standalone tool. You use it in connection with other attacks. By default, its value is 10. That's why we don't want to work with it that much. It's not very interesting. But over here, I'm giving you links to the articles that describe the properties of this domain. In fact, there aren't too many attributes there that look like exploitable. But we've got this GP-link attribute. It is a set of records in square brackets, LDAP, a link to a container, policies, and the name of the domain.
контейнер себя представляет.
The container,
Ну, собственно, вот мы спускаем.
well, in fact, you go down to the root, to the policies,
Контейнеры с нашими политиками.
and here are the containers with our policies, and certain parameters are set there.
Но давайте посмотрим, что можем.
But let's see what we can do about it. Can we
При этом, как вы видите, здесь inject
do something about this? We'll be able to write
DNS-сервер, прописать
we need an IP. Let's see if we'll be able to use this this attribute to update the IP address there. Over here, there's a utility that upgrades or updates the group policies. Our internal host is trying to get something out of LDAP. Okay, what can we add there? Well, basically, we can write an IP address down, and you see that it works. The external host, an IP address, or some third-party domain may look suspicious. Will we be able to act in a more clandestine fashion? Well, yes. Over here, I'm giving you a link to another paper that discusses exploitation of the DNS in Windows and Active Directory. By default, any user of the domain, an unprivileged user, is capable of adding their own DNS record.
Здесь вы видите, что мы добавили запись malicious test.ad.
So we added malicious DNS SolidLab local executable on 10.06. We didn't add a computer. We just added a DNS record.
И, как вы видите, вот мы прописали.
As you can see, over here we used the same record in GP-Link, and it worked. So okay, we made our user computers call our host, and the host belongs to the attacker. What else can we do? In fact, We don't need any of this. If we remove the protocol, if we remove the container name, if we just keep the host, it will be enough for us to call this computer. I tried here to add additional protocols, but they are all ignored, actually. The whole record here is ignored.
89
LDAP supports 389.
оно может быть от 0 до 3.
Is engaged regardless of what I'm writing. And over here you can see enabled, disabled, 2, 3 is also enabled and enforced, and 3 disabled and enforced link. Enforced means that it has a high priority and it may be useful in other attacks.
Итак, мы заставили наш
So we made
на
our victim call our server. Can we make this user authorize him or herself there? Well, if we can do that, then our next option is to start an Explorer or an NTLM relay to relay our account data to a different host, and then on behalf of this user to gain access to the required computer. What is NTLM relay? Again, here is a link where you can find all the details.
представляет NTLM-нотификация и
NTLM authentication, what is it? And what is this attack all about? NTLM is the authentication protocol. Just like Kerberos in Windows, which is quite straightforward. The client says that they want to authenticate themselves. The server sends a challenge, and then the client signs, well, hashes actually,
секрете, то есть
using the secret, this NTLM hash password, the server, and then the server checks whether the user is valid or not. If the server is a domain controller, then it already has a DS database where they can run this hash against the database and take the decision itself and respond. If it's not a domain controller, then the server will call the domain controller, will perform the logon, and check if this is our guy, not our guy. The domain controller will respond, and then the server will
общаться с клиентом.
continue communicating with the client. This is a typical MITM attack. The customer, we're in the middle. The customer believes that he or she is authenticated on the server. The server also thinks that the customer is authenticated, but in fact we did this on behalf of this user.
Хорошо. Давайте попробуем. Собственно, мы
Okay, let's try it. We start the responder. And you can tell everything's fine, queue update, we get the hashes, then we can send these hashes to brute force them offline, check them against the list of passwords.
именно net NTLM v2
You can see here that these are net NTLM-v hashes. We will not be able to reuse them, but we can try to brute force them. Most likely, the probability of this attack success will be low, and probably will not be able to get the passwords. So it would be best if we could achieve an NTLM relay. But there are defenses, and one such mechanism is a signature. A session key is used to sign.
произошел этап аутентификации.
After authentication, if signing is enabled,
Каждый пакет
then every packet is signed with this session key. The customer can generate the key him or herself, and if it's the server, if it's not a domain controller, then the server will call the domain controller to generate the session key on behalf of this server. Over here, you can see two matrices.
для LDAP и
The sign-in matrices for LDAP and for SMB. LDAP that offers you several options.
когда
The signature is disabled, enabled, and required.
в случае, если она
In case of LDAP, if it's enabled, it will be signed in all cases. And on the domain controller, it's always enabled.
Например,
So you wouldn't be able to do an LDAP on LDAP. If it's SMB version 2, then
когда у нас подпись включена, но
when the signature is enabled but it's not required, then this connection will not be signed.
мы можем посмотреть,
And in this case, we can refer to this matrix.
например, попробовать.
So what you can do is you can relay from LDAP to SMB if signature is not required, or you can also try to relay LDAP to HTTP.
Пойдем.
Okay. Let's take a look at another tool which is also very popular for NTLM Relay. It's called NTLM Relay X. And there was a trap there, actually. It turned out that NTLM Relay X doesn't have an LDAP server. A bit of an interactive discussion. And now, have you ever yourselves generated an NTLM Relay attack? No, not many people. Have you ever used LDAP server?
Один человек.
One person in the room? Please write to me. Why did you do this? No, I'm just curious about those attack cases.
Не реализован, то, видимо, это очень
Since they don't have LDAP there, probably it's the rarest case when that's why we don't get many calls to the LDAP server. Well, okay, so we've got Responder, we've got other tools. We captured hash, and the Responder has the LDAP server. Okay, you just match them against each other, and we'll get code for an NTLM Relay X.
Если вдруг вы захотите написать
So no, it didn't take me 20 minutes, it took me longer, but if you decide to code for a different server, for a different protocol, maybe you'll find this useful. This is a kind of a skeleton.
довольно
If you look at other servers on the repository, all the skeletons look similar.
run, функции там init,
There are several functions there, run, nita,
какие-то обвязки для хендлера. Большая часть из них тоже наследует
handlers.
base request.
They are legacy from socket server base request handler, just like LDAP server. So it looks very similar, nothing complicated there.
Negotiate,
Do NTLM function of attack, all these functions are all the same. Basically, you can take them as is and fine-tune them, and they will work for your purposes. So we just need an LDAP handler that is going to handle our request, this bundle of negotiate, challenge, response, and do the relay. This is a pseudocode
функция handle.
for handle.
Хорошо. Мы возьмем
So okay, you take code from LDAP responder.
там тоже довольно-таки небольшой код. Вот здесь, как вы видите,
The code there is not very long. Here in the cycle, it makes its request 5 times. 5 because 2 times it's going to make a search type of request. Will be looking for basic information on LDAP, and after that is going to authenticate.
да,
We'll try to authenticate.
здесь возникли проблемы.
So what were the main challenges there? Probably you will not be able to read very well from the slide. It's too busy, but
Берется
over here, you take the message sequence or the message ID that defines message ID for the packet. And in LDAP, from the responder, it considers its value to be 1 byte, and then a byte transaction is performed. Over here, VShock, if message ID run is 51, then it's fine because it's indeed 1 byte. It's over here, but if it's longer than 127, then that makes it 2 bytes and everything breaks down. If in the responder you see something like this, the transaction is not supported, most likely it's not about the transaction, but because your message ID is longer than 127 and parsing is incorrect.
в данном случае пришлось все это.
So in this case, we had to rewrite everything.
Проблема была
And the similar issue, we had a similar issue with the length of headings and NTLM length in the responder. Well, they think that the length of the NTLM record should be 1 byte, or will be 1 byte, and it's going to be 1 byte if our domain name is short. But if it's the SolidLab local, this is already longer, and you have to recalculate everything. And here, the two will have to recompute everything because all the previous bytes also predetermine the correct length. Okay, so we did the recalculation, fine. Another thing that took my time was this error, the status invalid parameter. One of the parameters was invalid, but it doesn't really tell you what went wrong. It just says invalid parameter. But after many different iterations, I realized that this negotiate flux.
Вот здесь вы можете видеть.
And over here, by the way, you can see what's in the flags. What's included. It tells you whether you need a signature or not. So if you rewrite the signature and it's whether it's required or not, then probably it's not a good idea. But if you change, say, a bit in your relay, your server will say, well, no, sorry, I'm not going to authenticate you because this doesn't look right.
Но, в общем, мы это все побороли.
So we overcame all these challenges eventually, and the updated code can be found on this link. This is the repository. Everything is already posted there. I'm going to do the merge request in the main repository too, but you can try playing with it now. So we didn't have to go into RFC. Well, actually, do read RFCs if you are developing something, if you are coding. But in this case, several test launches with several domain controllers and VShock sufficed for us to understand which packets are there, which bytes, what's responsible for what, what's controlling what, and the responder also helped us. To the left, you can see that we launched the NTLM Relay X less E. It means it's reactive. SMP shell should open at the local port. Here you enter the domain controller. The domain admin account is used. So we just logged in and we immediately received the account details. So the user doesn't know that this is happening. The user will not even be aware that there is an error or that the policy is invalid. The user logs in and we get the account data immediately. And we can relay them to our hosts. In the targets, 1007, 1006 IPs are identified, and they are the ones receiving our shells.
И мы подключаемся неткатом.
And we are getting connected with Netcat to local ports. And we can read shared disks, see what's there. We can upload or download something.
У нас учетная запись доменного.
In this case, it's the domain admin account, and because we have these credentials, we can read the files in the admin privileged directory. This is the account of the admin server. When we call the admin directory, it says access denied, which is only natural. But if you try to go to users,
Зайдем в сервер админ.
we go to the admin server.
Все хорошо, мы можем читать файлы.
Everything is fine. We can read the files from this user.
Можно, пожалуйста, вернуть на презентацию?
Can we go back to the slides? Thanks.
Вы увидели, что мы смогли получить.
So you saw that we were able to get the interactive shell out. We could read and upload files. There is another option there in the NTLM Relay X-E, which can give us the file that we want to execute there. there is another option. Well, actually, without this option, it will download the base on its own using the hashes from the domain admin. Then you'll be able to launch basic hash attack and then investigate this machine further. Or you can try to relate to HTTP. One of the most recent well-known attacks is DCS escalation, when on behalf of the user we can obtain the certificate. One of the links in the slides will also provide you with a lot of information on how to exploit ACDS. When we update the group policy, what happens next? You see that by default, when the users log in, group policies are refreshed automatically, and then they're also updated every 90 minutes and with a randomized offset up to 30 minutes. So every half hour, all the users who are logged onto the domain will try to refresh on GP link. They will be taken over to our host, and then we will relay them to somewhere else. So in just a couple of hours, we will be able to collect queries from all of the logged in users. This is the attack path. We compromise a user that has WriteProperty ACL on domain. Then we add a DNS record to some trusted, tested SolidLab local. After that, we change the HP link and we launch the tool. And then if we want to capture hashes, we launch the responder. If we do relay, then we will launch NTLM relays. Besides, this technique can be used to anchor yourself on the infrastructure. If you have an admin domain, then you can try to anchor yourself there. It's probably not a good idea to do it for the whole domain, because otherwise you will be discovered. But you can take an organization unit where our server is present, like a server admin, and make a GP link just to this organization unit. Very well. How do you protect yourself against these attacks? Like I said, you have to launch and analyze which ACLs we have on the domain, whether we need them or not. Maybe they were left after some testing. You have to double check everything. These are the three main tools that I use in my practice, but this is not a complete list. Maybe some other tools you'll find more useful. Besides, it makes sense to do an audit changes to the ACLs. This link will tell you how to write everything correctly. For your queries, all the ACL changes would be logged properly. And after you implement this policy, for event 5136, you will be able to get this kind of data.
So that you change the rights to the domain itself and the entity security descriptor. How do we protect against NTLM relays? Ideally, you have to switch off the NTLM authentication, and the hyperlink here shows you how to do that. These are records in the group policies, a screenshot of records. However, oftentimes we cannot switch the NTLM authentication in most of the times, so you can do that for the high sensitivity users, add them into the protect users group, and they won't be able to use the NTLA relay authentication. In addition to that, require SMB signing. We did the SMB add-up, but did not do the add-up on add-up because we didn't have the controllers. However, it would be great if you could do that for any servers.
не сможет, например, сделать эту атаку.
And in that case, this attack will not be possible. The service binding is another option
Избавляет нас от того, что мы, например, можем
that
делать кросс-релейные,
helps you with the cross-relay attacks,
LDAP на SMB или наоборот.
LDAP, SMB, or vice versa are not going to be possible. The same is true for the LDAP. It's not relevant because LDAP is already protected, but for other types of attacks, when you use HTTP to attack the LDAP, this can be used, so to keep this in mind. To sum up,
Нашли новый способ.
we identified a new abuse technique. If you have the right property for the ACL of the domain, we also demonstrated how it can lead to abuse of all the registered users. And the LDAP relay server has been released, so make sure that you protect your infrastructure against NTLM relays. You can click on this hyperlink to get the code, and this contact information is there for you to ask your questions. I'll be happy to take questions, if any.
Хороший вопрос.
Right. A great question from Gennady. We changed the object in the domain. Is it possible to use the policy from a fake domain? That would be the next logical step, to use a real group policy. I'm still analyzing that because it takes time, and there are difficulties and complications caused by the fact that we cannot just
Попросить его пройти на какой-то чужой LDAP и
ask it to use an external LDAP and use its policy or use the SMB. We recently published a research, the Synaptive published a research, and these guys exploited not the GP link, but rather the file path
сами файлы групповой политики.
to get the group policy files. So we send a request to LDAP, and then we send the SMB request. And
Просто им сказать, что
as far as SMB is concerned, we cannot just tell them that you've been
им все равно
authenticated. They still had to set up a net log on, and it's more convenient to use a domain machine. To roll out the LDAP there, you have two options: either use the ADDS,
контроллере. Но
and this is what we have in our domain controller.
сказать,
However,
это будет каким-то еще одним доменным контроллером.
you have to specify it as a domain controller. In other words, you have to have privileged rights, which is not suitable in our case. ADL TS is a separate LDAP when you don't want to deploy a domain controller, but you want to have some light LDAP for other functions. But since it's light, then group policies are not implemented there, which means that you have to add them yourself. I tested that. I tried and played it, sent a request. The server tried to get the access rights, but then it failed. And the packages that we received don't show us the why. And well, I hope that I will complete my analysis, and maybe next time I'll share the outcomes with you.
Большой вопрос, что делать, если у всех компьютеров
The big question mark is what if all the workstations use SMB signing, if they don't have any templates, if IPv6 is switched off, what if
спуфинг,
the IPS puffing is also switched off? What would you recommend in this case?
делать
Well, let me rack my brain over it, because in our context we did not use all these defense techniques. So like I said, let me get back to you on that, because our case was slightly different.
после того, как вы заставили заставили жертву перейти на нужный
After you send the victim to another host in addition to HTML hash, what other
уже было в первом вопросе.
logons would you recommend? Well, the next step would be to provide them with a valid group policy that the user would accept, and you might want to try to set up scripts, certain scripts on your PC and so on.
От какого имени пользователя выполняется обновление?
What username is used to update group policies if you don't use update brute force, and how often does it happen? Clients send requests either once every half an hour or either one half an hour. Well, you would get a request from all users who are logged in onto the domain. When they log in, you can see the requests from them. It doesn't happen every hour or even every half an hour, but every 90 minutes, every hour and a half, they send a request. Different domains might have different policies, but on average it takes 2 hours. What if logs have bugs in GPO application? I did not analyze the logs, but when you do a GPO update force, it just says that it cannot get the domain policy from a domain server because it cannot authenticate.
Помешает ли нам LDAP-S enforced?
Will LDAP enforced hinder our actions? I've never tested that. Will GP-Link damage anything in a corporate environment? Well, if you change it correctly, then it won't, because the specific policy will not be implemented. You can try delete or add the containers and try to change the values, change them back.
Валидную групповую политику.
If you want to add your own valid group policy, you will use a semicolon
Превалирующая перед остальными.
too, and it will prevail over other group policies.
Насколько я понимаю, запрет
As far as I understand, the ban of NTLM, NTL2 protects us against the attack, but will the LDAP signing help us? It won't. And I already mentioned that it's not relevant in our specific case because the LDAP
мы не можем его использовать, потому
cannot be used because we cannot use LDAP to attack another LDAP. But other types of attacks might be relevant. So, like I said, keep this in mind. Did you manage to find out the root cause of this network being present in the customer's infrastructure? Well, IT and admins probably tested something, they forgot about it, and that's why it happened. We're out of questions. Thank you so much for your attention. I need to pick the best question. Good morning. Thank you for your presentation. It was an interesting one, and Active Directory is something that we never discuss anymore because either people are ashamed of that or we don't like it. Anyway, my name is Oleg Kozhilin, FinTech IQ. And indeed, like I said, the presentation was interesting, but the domain that you talked about is either a lab-based one or an unsafe one. And the settings for mitigation in a more or less protected domain are always there. And I came across safe domains.
Linux. Интеграции.
And the Linux integration is the only pain point for them. So my question is, have you ever come across secure domains integrated with Linux? I'm talking either about desktops or servers. And if you have, then how was it done? Because the Kerberos was used in most of the cases. Thank you for the question.
Я бы сказала, что на моей практике пока еще.
Well, based on my experience, I've never. I've seen very few secure domains, some of them ran on Linux machines,
ломались,
but some Windows OS configurations would fail, and
какие-то линуксовые тоже ломались.
some Linux machines would also fail.
Kerberos, ну то есть форсировался, то
If the Kerberos was forced,
например, механизмы, которые делали деплой вот этих
then the mechanisms used for deploying the Linux machines were standardized, and you could find the user ID and get access to the Linux machine through that.
Linux.
As far as Linux is concerned, I'm not an expert on that, so unfortunately I cannot answer that part of the question. Thank you.
Здравствуйте, спасибо за доклад.
Thank you for the presentation. Just one question.
Обновление КПО приходили только пользователи?
Were the users the only ones to ask for the GPO update?
Я не смотрела.
Well, I did not analyze the entire traffic of the machine, but users would send their requests when they logged in, when they started up their machines. Well, you have to analyze the logs. Thank you.
Спасибо за вопрос.
Well, thank you for the questions, and I think that the best question came from Gennady. It was about whether we can use the domain policy, because that's the topic of my next research. Gennady, if you are in this conference hall,
Вам футболочкам спасибо.
this T-shirt goes to you then.
Спасибо большое.
Thank you so much.